We are moving on to the next business session now. And just to give me a couple of minutes to make the arrangements for the session. We now call upon Mr. S.V. Nathan, who is a partner at Deloitte, and Ms. Hema Mani, Regional Director, Human Resources, Lennox India Technology Center, to take their place on the dais, please. So they will be talking on this wonderful topic, leadership for inclusive success. May I have their AV, please.
Mr. S.V. Nathan, partner Deloitte India, specializes on advisory and enterprise development work. He is the former CHRO of Deloitte South Asia. A respected voice of the HR sector in India, he has been recognized as a distinguished alumnus by XLRI. He is also the recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award 2021 by Economic Times. He had served as the president of National Human Resources Development Network, the largest body of HR professionals in the country. Nathan is an author of the bestseller, The Heart of Work. Ms. Hema Mani. Hema Mani, a seasoned HR strategist with over 25 years of multinational experience, including roles at Kelly Consultants. Hema is a certified leadership coach under Korn Ferry Leadership Architect and Marshall Goldsmith and holds certification as an OD facilitator from the International OD Federation. Currently, she serves as the Regional Director, Asia Pacific HR at Lennox International. Under her leadership, Lennox India has earned recognition as a top great place to work. Hema also chairs CII Indian Women Network in Tamil Nadu, where she champions leadership development and gender parity initiatives. She has been recognized as a Women Super Achiever and a top HR innovator in 2023.
The hall is full. I think we get more applause for the speakers who are here today. Let's go with a wonderful round of applause. Pleasure having both of you with us this morning. I'll request Mr. Nathan and then followed by Ms. Hema Mani to share your views briefly. Thereafter, we'll take the Q&A that is coming online with us. Please come on.
Good morning, everybody. So, I have a presentation which is about 40 slides, and this is about leadership, inclusive success. People in the audience, you have a choice. Do you want to go through these 40 slides and almost 15 frameworks? Or do you want to listen to stories? If you want to listen to stories, raise your hand. Shameless people. And then all of you are going to say, no, we want these frameworks, it's going to change our lives. But since you wish to listen to stories, I'm going to shut down my presentation and share with you 3 stories. Why 3 stories? 15 minutes. I'm hoping that I finish this all in 15 minutes, maybe even earlier if I can, Hema. So, number 1 on that list is, hey, by the way, these are all my learnings. If I use the word I, it's not to be presumptuous. So it's the story is not about me. The story is about a protagonist. There is a hero in the story. And so you focus on the story, don't focus on me. Years ago, I was a general manager human resources in an Indian company. And I had moved from a British multinational. I had schooled in one of the finest schools in the country, XLRI, and I was feeling very proud of myself. And although I'm about 5 foot nothing, I always thought I was an Amitabh Bachchan. And I used to walk around as if I was an A. One day I was working, first week in my job. I was working a little late. At about 10 o'clock at night, as I stepped out of my cabin, I found in the far corner there was some singing going on. People normally at 10 o'clock don't sing. They all want to go home. But this guy was singing. There was a transistor. In those days, yes, you had transistors. You didn't have any of this fancy stuff that you put in your ears these days. Transistor, he was singing. So I went up to him and I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" So he stopped. He was doing something called cyclostyling. People in the audience, you may not know what is cyclostyling. Perhaps a few people in the front bench may know cyclostyling, where you have to take copies. There's a first copy, second copy, and a third copy. There's a machine that does it. Today, you have a Xerox. You don't even use a Xerox these days. Today, it's all done electronically. Those days, you were using cyclostyle. What was he doing? Cyclostyling. "What are you doing?" So he says, "Sir, I'm making payroll slips." So what about payroll slips? What is so happy about making payroll slips? Because I was making a judgment about the job that he was doing. He said, "Sir, you don't understand. Payroll slips are very important. One extra zero and somebody is extremely happy about his compensation. And 1 0 less, somebody is very unhappy. And therefore, the job that I'm doing is very important." In that moment, I learned something about this gentleman. And then he looked at me and he says, "Sir, if you don't mind, can I meet you tomorrow? Because, I have work to do." Which is his own polite way of saying, "Get out from here." Which I did. I said, "Could you meet me the following day, 10 o'clock? I'll be there." 10 o'clock, knock, knock, door opens. And he says, "May I come in?" I said, "Please take a seat." It was a pretty large room. First question that I asked him was, "What is your background?" Normal questions. "What's your background?" So he looked at me. And by the way, he was a very tall guy, almost 6 foot. So he said, "I have done my MBA." I said, "From where?" So he said, "ABC School of Management." I said, "I've never heard of ABC School of Management." "How will you hear about it, sir? In about a year after I joined, they closed down that place." So I found that he was also laughing at himself. So I said, "You seem to be very happy about it. Tell me, what was your undergrad? What did you do here? Did you do your BSc, BCom? What did you do?" So he said, "I did my BA History." And the way he said BA History was as if he had just won the Nobel Peace Prize. BA History. And to me, if you did BA History, it just means that you couldn't get through the normal STEM stuff and therefore you were given history. No, but not for this gentleman. "Hey, is it okay if I just use the mic and come to the center of the stage? Is it okay?" Yeah. No. Check. Yeah, it's working. So where was I? So he said, "I did my BA History." "Which college?" He told me the name of a college, which was like one of those colleges that those who can go to some colleges, those who cannot, ultimately will find their admissions in some college. He happened to speak about that college. So already, in my opinion, this guy was the bottom of the pits. Then I asked him one last question. "What was your percentage?" And he said, 36%, sir. And the way he said 36% was as if he's talking about 96%. So I said, you seem to be very happy with this 36%? He said, sir, of course. I said, so what is great about 36? He said, if they didn't give me 36, they had to suffer me for one more year. So they cleared me, and here I am. In all this, I recognize that here sitting in front of me was a very interesting gentleman. And I quite liked this guy. Despite all his achievements or the lack of it, he was a person that I could relate with. Now, just contextually, and this is again not about me, I was a topper in my class, I was a gold medalist, this, that, entire thing. It's very difficult for me to stand second. And I was speaking to somebody who was like a 36%, but he was so full of himself. In the moment, there was a call which said, hey, Mr. Nathan, I'm calling from Bombay, and I wanted a regional manager, human resources, for the last 6 months, and you have not given me even a single guy. So I said, I've been in my job only for a week. So he said, I don't care, I want somebody by the end of the day. Then I told him in that instant, and I said, I have a man who is the best, the very best. But you must be nice to him, okay? He's my best. He said, yeah, no problem. I kept the phone down. Then I looked at this other gentleman and I said, do you think you can go to Bombay and take on the job as a regional human resources manager? He said, yeah, sure. And then I asked him this last question. I said, do you know Hindi? And he said, Tora, Tora. Now, anybody who says Tora, Tora means that guy has no blinking clue. And, but anyway, I liked this guy and I said, okay, off you go. I forgot all about this guy. Turned out that it is one of the best decisions that I ever made in my entire life. One of the best decisions that I made. Before he left, he asked me this question. He said, you asked me a number of questions. I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know that I'm just a payroll clerk? And this job is 5 levels senior to the job that I'm doing. I said, it doesn't matter. He said, but somebody could come and ask you. I said, who can ask me? I'm the boss. It's okay. I took a chance. Fast forward, I have no idea what happened to this gentleman. Much later, I got a call, maybe about a year ago, I got a call. And this person on the other line says, Mr. Nathan, I'm really annoyed that my company is asking me to go to Miami for the 3rd year running. All expenses paid for me and my wife. And I said, for what? He said, they choose the top 0.001% performers in the world and they bring them to Miami. Miami is a nice beach resort. And they give us a good time. I said, then why are you annoyed with it? I mean, if you have a problem about it, please tell me. I can change places with you. He says, no. Can't they find a better place than Miami? How about Switzerland? So I said, yeah, I think you should just ask your management these questions you're asking me. But don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Go enjoy yourself. And then I put the phone down and I was smiling. Normally, you'll notice this. When you're on a phone and you put the phone down, and if you have an ugly or a very funny grin about you, somebody who's close by will notice it and say, hey, what's the matter? What happened? So then that was my wife, and she looked at me and says, you seem to be smiling. So I said, yeah. This is a guy, Miami, 3rd time, he's complaining. I said, why is he complaining? He should not be complaining. I said, yeah, he does. But he's happily complaining. He just wants to let me know that, boss, you have not gone to Miami 3 times. I've been there already. That is the message he wants to convey. And he says, yeah, but are you not unhappy? You seem to be happy about it. Yes, I'm happy about it because many, many years ago, almost 18 years ago, this gentleman who's gone to Miami third time round used to be a payroll clerk. I will never forget Mahi. Mahidar Reddy is his name. Amazing gentleman. It taught me a lesson. Because if today we are talking about leadership and we are talking about success, perhaps part of what I want to convey is, it's not the education that we get, but what we do with the education that we get is more important. What do we do with the education? Let me ask you a question. How many of you sitting in this room are leaders? Raise your hands. Hey, come on, guys. I think everybody should be raising your hands. Let me make a statement and then I'll ask the same question. All of us lead a life, yes? If you lead a life, you're a leader. Now, do you believe you're leaders? Yes? Of course. All of us are leaders. That's the end of my first story. That's the story. Second story. I was in Hyderabad. I wanted a stenographer. Anybody who knows who a stenographer is? What a stenographer? Yeah, only a few guys. Okay, I see a few. Steno is when you dictate something, somebody takes notes in Pitman shorthand, and then they would type it, and they'll bring it, and then you can read it and make those edits and send it off. Today, a Google Assistant does that. You don't have to do anything. You have to speak into your phone, and the whole thing is transcribed. It's so easy. Those days, you had a stenographer. I wanted a stenographer, and the best stenographers that you will find, this is the sign of the times. The best stenographers in the country are from South India. Most of them are from Chennai. If you look at all the people who migrated from Chennai to Calcutta, to Bombay, to Delhi, all those places, many of them, and the children have done exceedingly well in their lives and so on, many of them are from Chennai. So I met this guy. I said, I want a good stenographer. In Hyderabad, you couldn't get stenographers. They tried to import people from Chennai. Shortlisted 3 people. 2 of them, they said they are very good. 1 person is not good at all. I said, why? Because he is very short and he's also very plumpy. So I said, don't make these remarks. It's not right. You should look at the talent, but you should not really look at how the person is. By the way, do I look very tall? No. So bring him on. The moment I started speaking to him, I realized that I had a winner on my hands. In 15 minutes, I could make out that this person sitting in front of me is an outstanding professional. End of that, I asked him this question as he was going to leave the room. I said, okay. He had all what he had wanted on this resume. I said, you did your BSc Physics and you did this from so-and-so college of repute. What was your percentage? He had failed to mention that in his resume. The percentage was 8 and 6, 86 in physics. 86 in physics in those days used to be like the top of the pops. It's like getting 98% of today. Sitting in front of me was an outstanding gentleman. But what did he do for 20 years of his life? He was a stenographer. So I told him, you know what? I'll make sure that in 18 months you're out of a job. And he got worried. He says, you're going to get me out of a job? I said, no, out of this job as a stenographer, but you could do something else within the organization. So 18 months later, I moved him into operations. Time passed. 10 years later, he comes home on a Sunday morning when you least expect visitors. And he says, sir, I want to resign from this company and you must bless me. I said, you want to resign from this company for all what this company has done for you? He said, no, sir, you've been very, very kind. The company has done a lot for me, but I would like to leave. And before you change your mind, would you please read this letter? So I opened the letter. It says, "Dear Mr. So-and-so, we are pleased to welcome you aboard as General Manager, Human Resources, so-and-so company." The company happened to be a multinational. Today, Nagaraj is the Vice President, Human Resources of that same multinational in Hyderabad. It's an amazing, amazing story for me. What it tells me is, again, an 86% in physics, and look what happened to him much later. It doesn't really matter what you do with your percentages. It's what you do with what you want to do on the job. And I'll tell you my third story. All set? Yes? Okay. So, again, back to one of the companies where I was working. I was the head of human resources, and this was a resort company called Sterling Holiday Resorts. Some of you may have heard about this company. I had moved from a company which chose only the best, or so I thought. And I joined this company where you didn't find anybody with even a respectable background from any of these top colleges. But they did something that no company on earth could ever do. They chose people very carefully for their attitude. For their attitude. And this story is all about that. If you're looking at success, I think this is the most essential part of what you should be focusing on, which is attitude. I was in Kodai, and we have Sterling Resorts at Kodai. It so happened that one night, somebody in an inebriated condition. In those days, you had Maruti cars, small ones, Maruti 800. This guy had driven his car so close to the lake that it almost sank into the lake. And very unfortunate, but this guy was drunk. He came, and this was almost at about midnight, came to the reception. There was a person who was almost asleep, and he says, "Hey, listen, I think my vehicle is going to drown, so can you help me?" So there was nobody in sight. I said, "Let me make one last round because nobody seems to be around, but give me a moment." This person came out, looked all around, and then he found that there was a light in the gymnasium. And in the gym, they found a person who was working the irons. And people in the last benches who are talking to each other, you might want to take a note of what this could do to your own life. So here was a guy in the gym, and he was working and pumping iron. Called this gentleman and said, "Well, there is a car which is almost going to drown. Can you help?" So this person said, "Of course." He got out, put on some clothes, called 4 or 5 of his mates who were in the kitchen sleeping. They ran out, they dragged the car out. He took it to a garage, make sure that the garage operator opened up the engine, made sure that the engine oil and whatever else had to be cleaned out, got it cleaned. 7:30 in the morning, the morning cup of coffee presented was what? Number 1, keys. And he says, "This car is working, it's in fine fettle. The bill will be at your door, but don't worry about it. It's not something which is very high. Enjoy your day. Thank you very much, and thank you for staying with Sterling Holiday." He's give a, yeah, you could do that. And thank you for being with us. He gave a big smile, and then he walked away. I happened to be in Kodai Resort on that day. And I happened to hear about this in the morning. And I was swept off my feet. So I called up the resort manager and I said, "We got to do something about this. We got to recognize this man. So let's do that." So what did they do? That evening, they called for a very, very special event of all the staff. And then, in front of all the staff, I presented a very nice note which I had handwritten. But more importantly, there was a check of rupees 2,000. Now, 2,000 in those days is equivalent to multiply by 10, about 20,000 or 25,000 of today, which is a lot of money. And I gave it to him. And then I said, there's going to be a very special dinner for all of us, and I thought he's going to be very happy. No. He looked at me and says, thank you, sir, but no thank you. I walked away, and then later, he came up to me and he says, sir, just want to tell you that thank you for what you've given me, but this is not enough. So I said, 2,000 is not enough. You mean to say it holds no value for you? No, 2,000 is a lot of money, but that's not what I want. What do you want? He looked me in the eye and he says, I want a career. I don't want to end up as a gym instructor all my life. So I said, what are you willing to do for it? Whatever you tell me. The one thing that I want to ask of you is, can you find a way of having me on your team? Perhaps even your assistant, I don't mind, but I just want to be with you. I said, fine. So this gentleman tagged with me for a few years. And during those years, he did his correspondence course and finished his BCom. And then he enrolled into another program where he did his master's in business administration, again correspondence, not from any great college, and again he did well. Many things happened. I lost sight of this gentleman, he lost sight of me. As always, the one that I really, really love are those telephone calls. And I got a telephone call one day. I said, sir, I need your counsel. I said, what about? This was just before COVID, just before the COVID. I have got 2 job offers. One job offer is from this retail chain. Another job offer is from this retail chain. And you got to help me decide which is the one that I should go for. So then we did some small thing, whatever it is. But when people ask you these questions, it's a rhetoric question. You don't have to answer those questions. You just have to bounce it out. What do you think you want to do? And what are your strengths? What do you want? Etc., etc. And that went on for a few minutes. He had decided on one particular job offer. He went for it. Today, if you're going to be looking at lifestyle, and if you inquire with them about their Vice President Human Resources, he goes by the name of S. Venkatesh. What was Venkatesh many years ago? Was a gym instructor. That's the story. That's the story. So let me pull all these 3 stories together. One is the story of sheer attitude and staying in the moment and doing the best of what they do. By the way, what I didn't tell you was, in the first story, this gentleman who didn't have all those great marks, he was a director of human resources, the highest one could get in the country, of one of the topmost multinationals that had come into town. And he was there for a fair number of years. Amazing guy, number 1. 2, Nagaraj. What was he? A stenotypist. And the third person, what was he? A gym instructor. In all these, it's what you do with the education that matters, but not the education in itself. If you're looking at leadership, let's learn to lead ourselves. What do you need? Just 3 things. 1, passion. Do you have the passion? Number 2, will you do what it takes to get to the top, whatever it is? And number 3, will you look at adversity in the eye or anything which is painful in the eye and say, I shall yet win? This is what all these 3 people did. That's how you lead a life. That's how you succeed. And this is what I learned very fortunate. In all my several years in human resources, I have had more teachers, more of people that worked with me than of people who've learned anything with me, from me. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Hema. Over to you, Hema.
We shall continue this journey here. Wonderful to see all of you, and thank you for the opportunity. It's always a challenge to come after Nathan sir and before lunch perhaps, right? But you know, when you hear his stories, you want to hear more, right? And that's what that led me to. And I had written my own few stories, but I think how futile they are in front of some life experiences somebody as rich as Nathan shares with all of us here, right? So all these three case studies, as you heard them, those stories, if you were to reflect upon, what are some key messages that each one of you have taken? Can we have a chatter amongst us? Is it okay? Can we make it participatory? What were some key elements that you picked up from all these three stories? You can be loud enough. Leaders of tomorrow, or today rather. Attitude? Attitude matters, all right? Uh-huh. Somebody must hand over the mic to her. She's saying some very profound things here. There is one here. Switch it on here.
Hello. What I'm saying is it's not important what were you in the past. If you have the resilience, if you have the perseverance and to see into the eyes of future and say, I'm coming to you, you are the next leader.
Fantastic, fantastic. Anybody else? Yeah, you should, you should. A couple of more voices. Yeah, there's somebody there at the back. A lime green t-shirt. Yeah. Just straight at the back, yes.
Ma'am, we must be studious to our work, ma'am. Dedication is most important.
Dedication is more important. Thank you. Anybody else before I present what I picked up from these three stories? Yes, there's one more person here. The smart gentleman right here in the front. If you could stand up, they will then see you. Yeah.
Life's a constant learning process. You never stop learning. There's no age to learn or acquire new skills.
Wow, what book are you reading these days? Wow, that was heavy. Here are some simple life lessons I picked out of those. And when you reflect back into your OB books, into your leadership theories, go back and please do that and let us know if I stand corrected or if I'm wrong. I picked up just four elemental basic lessons, right? One of H for humility. As H is for Hema, H is for humility as well. If you look at all those three stories Nathan shared, there's a strong appeal of feeling very secure with where I am today. This is what I am. There was one story that he spoke about a gym instructor. There was another story that he spoke about a stenotypist. Another story that he spoke about a payroll processor, right? In all these stories, the interaction the individuals had with the manager, with their managers, which in all the stories happened to be him, it evoked a lot of humility for me, right? A self-reflection question. How many of us, after having about 20 years of life experience, which also includes an MBA program, and the MBA program dins into you on how you should feel powerful and how you should be a leader. That's what an MBA program does day in and day out. How many of us really, when we step out and meet that one gentleman who gets the mic around us or the one gentleman who's helping us serve water here, we actually stop by and say thank you? For me, that's humility. And here's my story. And it's a story that's happening in the current. I'm still experiencing it as I'm in this organization. We hire a lot of people who not necessarily come in from urban cities. You know, urban cities have a certain cultural ethos. The students are far more confident, they're very good in their language skills. They come from very privileged backgrounds, you know, upper middle class backgrounds. We also hire students who come in from tier B, tier C, quote unquote, as they're called, cities, and who join us in different roles. Very often, we all have lunches together. It's a common cafeteria. There is no distinction of titles or designations in our cafeterias. We all sit together. We have our lunches together. And I always notice this. There is this group that is come from certain specific premier colleges sitting together and having their lunches. And there are these groups who come in from these colleges and they come in and they have their lunches together, right? You often see this. I think it almost, I think, culturally there is some semantic differentiation that happens. Nobody forces it, but it happens. And then, you know, we have these competitions or these programs or these contests that happen in the office. And usually what I see, the ones that are most excited to come forward and participate are the ones who are coming in from these, you know, tier 2, tier C, quote unquote, towns, those colleges. They are very excited to perform. They're very excited to come and showcase their talent. And I keep wondering, why is that? So I have this colleague of mine who often comes forward. He joined us about 10 years back, and we had an Independence Day celebration. We were all sitting in that small little conference room. Back then, we were very small. We were sitting in a conference room, and we were actually celebrating. This guy, he's worn a white shirt that day. And he didn't know what he needed to do, but all I could see was the energy he had, the look on his face that he had. There were some colors and some paints that we had set aside. He just goes, he splashes paints on his shirt of the India map and all the variety of things that he does, and he dons that shirt, he walks into the conference room, and he says Tamil poetry. I think that's what he recited. His name is Aditya. This was 10 years back. He joined us from a very small town, lot of dreams, the first generation professional from their family, and he does this. And in that moment, in that conference room, we were possibly about 50 or 20 or 30 of us sitting, and everybody is noticing the kind of you know, energy he brought in. He brought in a lot of laughter. He evoked a lot of laughter. 10 years later, which is almost about a couple of years later, he becomes one of the team leaders in our groups, in one of our groups. What led him to be there? Not necessarily the fact that he actually participated or he took that courage to participate in a program, but I think his enthusiasm. I think his personal security within himself that no matter what, I will just give this a try. I will just give this a shot. And that one shot that he gave that day kept him in the radar for many of us. In fact, all of us leaders in the organization kept a lookout for him. Hey, where's Aditya? Aditya can do this. If this cannot be done by anybody else, pull him in. Let him do it. He can do it. Right? So the second aspect that I picked up from probably the story of the gym instructor or something like that is the inner need to be enthusiastic always, to say yes no matter whether I can do it or whether I will fail on it. Can we say that yes? How many of us, again a self-reflection question for all of you there, how many of us weigh in our mind, should I do this? Should I not do this? Should I raise my hand? Should I not raise my hand? A point of hesitation. How many of us do that? The moment your mind says no and you're hesitant, remember one thing, friends, you've just lost that small bit of opportunity, that window of opportunity that gets opened out for you. just what I started at the beginning. There were 3 stories, there were some lessons, and I just asked a question. Is there anybody here who wants to tell me what you picked up from these stories? And a couple of you raised your hands. I'm sure as you walk out for lunch, these are 2-3 people you will look out for. At least there'll be some who are sitting in the front will look out for. Somebody will ask them, what's your name? Which institution are you from? This is about putting yourself out enthusiastically. They may not have known whether they're telling the right thing or the wrong thing, but they just needed to express themselves. All right? The second thing is, all of us come from different backgrounds. You know, we settle down in offices with different cultures. Are we able to include ourselves in everybody else's differences? People come with different differences. People come from different ideological backgrounds. People come with different language backgrounds, different societal backgrounds. Are we able to see ourselves as one among them and be a part of them? Be part of their happiness, their success, and their joy. So in a classroom, I'm sure it's almost a replica of the same situation. All of you are in very heterogeneous classrooms with different sets of people. How many of you actually walk in and talk to people who are from backgrounds very different from you and actually have a conversation with them? Actually try and understand them as to saying, hey, who are you? Why are you here? What is bringing you here? What are some of your aspirations and your ambitions? And then there is a lesson in there for you to take back saying, when I become a leader, these are some things I will be conscious about. If I can use a jargon, a HR jargon, it would be called unconscious bias. And friends, all of us possess these unconscious biases. None of us who can here say, I'm totally devoid of any bias, because it's very inherent. It's a very inherent quality within us. But we can, by looking in different directions, hearing different perspectives, feeling out different sentiments, understanding different issues, understanding different perspectives, keep shaving away those biases and be very inclusive, which is the topic of this particular panel, Leadership Through Inclusive Success. And so, before we take on questions, and that's what we want to do more so, because I heard there are some questions. Panchatantra is a beautiful collection of stories of leadership. I know there are several books written on leadership, but nothing like simple stories that nature can teach us. And here is a story for all of you. Sher Khan. Who would be Sher Khan? In Panchatantra, any idea? Who would be Sher Khan if you hear the name? Lion? Yeah? So Sher Khan is a lion in a jungle, and a very fair king of the jungle. It happens at a time when the forest was going through a drought, and Sher Khan wanted ideas on how to protect all the other animals and birds in the forest from this drought. So what he does, he calls for a meeting, and in this meeting there are elephants, there are rabbits, there are birds come, and they all wonder, why has he called us? Why shouldn't the king take the decision and we'll just follow him? But Sher Khan says, no, I want to take your counsel, I want to take your suggestions, and to see how we can go through this drought in a safe manner. How do we make sure we protect each other? So he collects their ideas, he collects their thoughts, he encourages different perspectives, and then these animals all go out. The birds fly off far off, they try and get some water from different lands. The rabbits burrow deeper and deeper into the land, trying to find water as deep as it can. What does this story tell all of us? Here is a very powerful leader, right? A lion is supposed to be very aggressive, very powerful, something that every animal, the rest of the forest or jungle are very afraid of. But here is a place where he takes the counsel, he collectively takes a decision and finds the solution through everybody. For me, it's about the power of collaboration, which is also on the underlying ethos of inclusive leadership. How many of us as leaders can come down the titles and designations and really reach out to our team, collect their ideas, their thoughts, and then bring it all together and drive the whole organization in a synergistical manner. Now, many of you may not have worked in organizations, but think of yourself in your project teams. I'm sure all of you are doing some project assignments, case studies, and so on and so forth. Think yourself in those perspectives. You may be managing events. How many of you are getting into those events, getting everybody's ideas and thoughts, and then shaping the solution together, which is really inclusive leadership for me? So 3 lessons for me that I picked up from the stories that Nathan shared and some of the ones that I experienced myself. One is humility as an expression to my persona or our persona itself. 2 is, as much as possible, keep shaving away the biases that we form because of perspectives, because of our experiences, but try to keep shaving it away, try to keep lowering that. And finally, the ethos of collaboration. Therein lies the power of many. So these are the 3 things that I'd like to leave you all behind with. And with that, we'll open out to some questions. Yeah.
Been told by the organizers that we may not have time for questions, but if you people are ready, one more story, one real short story? Yes? Show of hands, show of hands. Okay. One more story, we'll close. So this is the story of a grandmother. The grandmother has only one leg, and she lives in a very, very large palace, all of just one room. That room is the bedroom, the living room, the dining room. You talk about anything, it's just that one room there. There's nothing called an attached toilet. I mean, there's a common toilet for a number of people out there. How many people lived in that one room? 14, 1-4. And you add a few of her grandchildren not included in these 14 adults who were living in that room, was this grandmother with one leg. But the grandmother loved one thing, which all grandmothers love to do, share stories. So every day she would go into a living room. What was a living room? The living room was the footpath, the platform as we call it. The sidewalk, fashionable way to say that these days. So on the sidewalk in the evenings, at about 6, she'll have a small bowl of curd rice, and which she will very happily give it to a lot of people who will be milling around, normally very young children, and they want to listen to her stories. Very gripping stories. Very gripping, very absorbing. All kinds of mythological stories, all kinds of stories. People love to listen to her. She had only one leg. That room that she had did not even have a privacy curtain. All it did was jute bags which were tied together. That was the privacy curtain in their house. But what did she want from all her audience? She said, I want your attention. One day, when she was recounting a story, one of the boys did not look at her, but instead looked somewhere else. And she got very annoyed and she slapped the boy. What are you looking at? He said, Grandma, I'm sorry. Tears in his eyes. He says, Grandma, I saw a car. What about that car? It was a beautiful car, Grandma. Black colored. Ambassador. What about it? Grandma, can I ever drive that car? Can I ever sit in that car? So the grandmother looks at the boy and says, of course you can. All you should do is you should visualize yourself sitting in that car. And if you're sitting in that car must be your own. And you must be the owner of that car and driving that car. Alternatively, the car must be yours, the driver must be yours, and you must be sitting behind, and he should be driving you to work. And this, the grandmother tells the child who used to go to a corporation school. The corporation school in those days, you have to sit on the ground. This boy didn't have more than 2 changes. of clothes all through the year. The only time when they used to get new clothes was at Pongal time, not even at Diwali. Diwali, if they get something, it's pure luck. So that's the kind of background for that boy. But the child had almost gleam in his eyes. He says, Grandma, what do I have to do? Have a vision, study hard. Have a vision, study hard. You will be there. Every time I sit in my car and as I drive down to work, I remember that old lady because I enjoyed those stories, because the person who shared that story is a person very dear to me. The boy who got slapped is speaking to you. And that one-legged grandmother was my grandmother. I can't tell you why it is so important to have a vision. If you really think you want to do something, you can get doing that. I didn't know English. I couldn't read a word, but they encouraged me. I didn't go to the top schools, but eventually I did. Again, back to education. What you do with education is more important. Again, this is not about the individual, but this is about the various people who are in the world wanting you to succeed. Make sure you get the right people. Make sure there are a lot of mentors around. Seek them, find them. On that note, lead a very successful life, an inclusive life of success. Wishing you all the best, and this is from the two of us, Hema and myself. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nathan and Ms. Hema Mani. It looked like a story time for all of us. So wonderfully, you taken us through this session, Leadership for Inclusive Success, and all through stories. May I request the convention chairman to honor them with a couple mementos. May I request Ms. Hema Mani also to step forward and accept a memento on MMA behalf. So students, we are all set for one more session before we break for lunch, and I would invite the session speakers for the next session, that is Business Session 3.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I want to tell you something. You heard some lovely stories. I want to tell you what commitment means. I don't think it happened a couple of occasions with me in the Air Force, but it has never happened to me before. Mr. Nathan's younger sister passed away this morning. He said, no, I have given a commitment. I will come speak to the students and go back. I mean, that took a big round of applause for Nathan's commitment.
So that is commitment for you students. I think this is the biggest lesson all of us should take it back from here today. So may I call upon the speakers for the next session, Dr. R. Palaniswamy, IAS, retired, as Advisor Education Srinivasan Services Trust, Mr. Suniti Bhatt, Managing Director, Sale and Exploration Technology Limited, and Mr. Surit Pathasarthi, Advocate and Policy Commentator. May I request all three of you to come on to the dais, please. ಯಾರ್ದು ಇದು? ಇದು ಯಾರು? Students, stay back. You're not to go now. We have on this session going. Even if you go now, there's no lunch served for you. Please settle down now. Just one more session, and then you all can break. Unless I tell them there, they won't serve you lunch. So just keep sitting here. Let's welcome them with a round of applause, the three guest speakers for the next session. May I have their AV, please?